Let's bring in MS Now senior Capitol Hill reporter and host of Way Too Early, Ali Vitale, outside that Senate hearing. MS Now's Laura Hafley was at the Tom Homan presser in Minneapolis. Also with us, Hofstra Law professor James Sample and MS Now contributor Paula Ramos. Let's start in Minneapolis. Laura, a significant announcement from Tom Homan saying this surge is winding down. Walk us through it.
Yeah, Anna, it's an announcement that many in Minnesota have been waiting for. Operation Metro Surge is officially over, but what will that look like? Well, Tom Homan says that many of these ICE agents are already leaving Minnesota, but despite that, they still intend on maintaining a presence across the state, pre-positioning ICE agents in order to respond if sheriff departments need their assistance. But those numbers will likely go back to pre-Metro Surge levels. Now, as I said, people in Minnesota looking for this announcement, waiting for it over the last few weeks during this chaos that we've seen on the ground. Now, as I mentioned, Metro Surge is over, but there's many things that could still happen moving forward. And a lot of that is affecting people in Minnesota, including school districts, which are struggling to maintain the presence of students. We know there's one school district outside of Minneapolis, Fridley School District, that has about a 50% absence rate. So there is long-term effects of what we've seen during Operation Metro Surge. Still, that announcement important to people here in Minnesota. Take a listen.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. There will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators' incidents either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending.
Now, Homan did spend much of that press conference touting the work of ICE agents, claiming that thousands of people have been arrested and deported. He did say at the end of the press conference he does not want to see any more bloodshed, likely in reference to the killing of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Those investigations still very much underway. Anna?
Laura Hafley, thank you. We'll let you get going. We know the governor of Minnesota has a press conference expected within the hour, which you'll be covering. James, this operation has already resulted in 2 dead Americans, officers using chemical irritants on children, pointing guns at people, threatening journalists, detaining Americans, alleged racial profiling happening. And then there are businesses that have lost millions. School attendance has plummeted. Is it mission accomplished in Minnesota?
Absolutely not, Anna. And the fact that it took you as long as it took you, and appropriately so, to phrase that question, because the litany, the laundry list of all of the harms that have occurred is just as extensive as you articulated it to be. Mission accomplished? Absolutely not. I think the mission that was accomplished here, certainly there are some individuals who were not only undocumented, but had also been dangers to the community, who will be deported, because when you round up 4,000 people, many of whom were not criminals. In fact, statistically, most were not criminals, and certainly not violent criminals. You will find a few who were. So in that regard, yes, but was the cost of what was imposed on the citizens of Minneapolis and the greater community of Minnesota worth that benefit? That's a question that Americans will have to answer. It's a question that the government itself will need to be held accountable for. And I think one of the things that we learned through this process is that there is a real disconnect between what the government is saying to the American people and what the American people can witness with their own eyes. And that erosion of trust is a cost that isn't worth really any benefit, even if you do think the benefits are real.
To that point, I want to highlight something else Homan said last hour. Let's listen.
The Twin Cities and Minnesota in general are and will continue to be much safer for the communities here because of what we have accomplished. We've had great success with this operation, and we're leaving Minnesota safer. The surge is leaving Minnesota safer, Minneapolis safer.
Paula, does that align with what you heard from folks you spoke to in Minneapolis?
No, I was just texting with some folks, organizers, Latino voters, and the one common theme is, where's the accountability? No, if there's no accountability in Minneapolis, will they then go, say, to Ohio and do the same thing or even exacerbate the violence? I was able to talk to Liam Conejo Ramos's father on Tuesday. And I mentioned this because as Tom Homan says that people are safer, people like Liam are still in hiding, right? People like Liam, as we speak, have been unable to go to school, unable to get educated because of the fear. Liam's mother also is pregnant. People like her cannot get the care that they need, cannot get the medical attention that they need because they're literally in hiding. And like Liam's family are hundreds of other immigrant families. And so anyone in Minneapolis right now will tell you that they will be safer because ICE is gone. But the bottom line is ICE is never truly gone, right? This is what Tom Homan is saying. But just on Tuesday, you had Todd Lyons saying that the operations are just getting started. So I think there's this big disconnect between what they're telling us and then what's happening. What's happening is that if the mission continues to be mass deportations, if that is the goal, if the 3,000 arrests per day is the goal, then that will continue to be an ideological battle for them, not a political one, and they will not stop until they do that.
We just got a new statement from Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. He says they thought they could break us, but a love for our neighbors and a resolve to endure can outlast an occupation. These patriots of Minneapolis are showing that it's not just about resistance. Standing with our neighbors is deeply American. Those words from Mayor Jacob Frey in response to this announcement from the Trump administration that they are planning to conclude Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis and St. Paul, the Twin Cities in Minnesota. Meantime, Allie, we know there'll be a lot of questions for those DHS leaders as they face senators there on Capitol Hill today. It's ICE, CBP, and Customs and Immigration Services heads that are back on the Hill. Minnesota leaders, though, are up first. They're going to hear from House Majority Whip Emmer as well as Attorney General Ellison. Explain this two-panel approach.
Yeah, they've been underway now for about an hour, about 45 minutes. And the two-panel approach was really a decision from the majority. They can start on a micro level, examining what happened on the ground in Minnesota, and then expand more broadly as they talk to the heads of ICE, CBP, and Immigration Services. But as you guys were talking about a disconnect, I want to stress the disconnect that has been going on between the conversation we've been having in the hallway and the one that they've been having in the room. Because it was only just 2 minutes ago when Senator James Lankford, you see him there still speaking on the screen, actually informed the people in the room, which includes the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison, that the operation in Minnesota has ended. So what you're probably hearing now as Ellison takes the mic is some kind of a reaction to that. And certainly as he leaves the room, that's something I'm going to be chasing as well. But that's not something that had trickled into the room until just a few moments ago. And so I think for many of these officials, Ellison started his remarks here by talking about the fact that he wants to see Operation Metro Surge end. And now by the time he walks out of the hearing room, he's going to have gotten his wish, at least in terms of a promise from the mouth of Tom Homan. I will also say we've seen this hearing or an iteration of it once before by the time we get to the ICE and CBP officials. That's testimony that happened on Tuesday on the House side of the building. It was intense. There was a bit of substance, but a whole lot of theater, as many of the hearings on the Hill this week have been chock full of. But I also think that during this hearing, what we've heard, especially from the Republican chairman, Rand Paul, is both an acknowledgement that the shooting deaths of Alex Preddy and Renee Good are not the kinds of things that should be happening. Paul has been vocal about his concern about those things in recent weeks as well. But then also Republicans pointing to sanctuary city policies. That's sort of the balancing act that we are watching them do in this hearing now. And I will say it makes it pretty different than the hearing that we saw on Tuesday. But again, this panel is just Minnesota focused. We've not yet gotten to what I would argue is going to be the broader national focus with these federal officials later today.
Allie, we'll, of course, stay close to you. But, James, we know this panel was triggered. This hearing today was triggered because of the Alex Preddy shooting and the lack of transparency about the investigative process there. We know the Attorney General is facing questions right now. We have producers monitoring. Should he be able to confirm whether there is now a joint federal-state investigation into the Preddy shooting? And what else will you be listening for in his testimony?
Well, the first thing I would say, Anna, is that Ali's report there was astonishing in the sense that it is a staggering realization to, as she said, another example of disconnect when the state attorney general, apparently, at least according to Ali's reporting there, was effectively informed of this news as opposed to learning from Tom Homan himself from a federal to state level. So, I mean, I think we all Americans want to see a credible investigation into the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And, you know, it is staggering to think and go outside of Minnesota for a moment to Chicago and to think about Miramar Martinez, a woman who the Department of Justice was prepared to prosecute for the crime essentially of being shot 5 times. And yet the evidence indicates that she didn't do any of what she was being accused of doing, ramming the car. And that's only because of cameras. It speaks to, again, this theme of disconnect that is just extraordinary in the sense that maybe the most powerful weapons that were in Minneapolis were the cell phones, right? The cell phones that recorded the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. And we're learning now that Miramar Martinez, only because of body cam footage, avoided prosecution for being shot.